to get to the gym because I spent so much time in the woods. And when you're getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you're running, 8 or 10 miles a day, sometimes your body just don't feel like it. So in January, I said, I'm going back to the gym. Well, January rolls around, February, March, April, May, and then we go to Canada. So while I was in Canada, I'm like, as soon as I get back home, I'm going back to the gym. And we got back on Sunday, and Monday, this boy's butt was at the gym. And it was humbling because I'm over 50 now. I'm not in the shape that I'm in. My body does not work the way it used to. And I've just been putting in my time. I was started out going 2 days a week, and now I'm up to 3 days a week. I missed the gym this past week because I was in New Orleans, and I feel awful because I haven't been there. But there's a couple reasons that I did this. One, because I want to be in shape for my job. And two, because I noticed in the last couple of years that I was not as flexible and agile as I have been going through the woods. I was tripping a lot more, going over logs and stuff. I was struggling to do that, and it was slowing me down. And I'm okay with going a little bit slower, but I did not feel like that my body was where it needed to be for me to be doing what I was doing, and that's chasing the dogs. So I started doing some research, and this was back at the first of the year, and I come up on this Hunt, Lift, Eat website, and I started looking through it. And when I see who the founder and the CEO is, I'm like, he is a hometown guy. Like, grew up 2 counties over. We played them in football. We wrestled them. And then I keep going through his bio, and it says graduated Virginia Tech in 2013. And I'm like, all right, he's in my back door. So anyway, I reach out. And because of scheduling, we've kind of been going back and forth. But I finally got Luke Cox on. Luke is originally from Grayson, now in Colorado. And I'm going to let him go over his bio because he's going to talk to us today about keeping our minds and our body right for many different reasons. And Luke, I'm just appreciative you're on. If you don't mind, just tell the listeners, what got you here, who you are, all the things that they're going to read if they pull up on your bio.
Yeah, for sure, Heath. First of all, I just really appreciate you being flexible and patient with me as we tried to iron this one out. My schedule's been pretty wild. Really happy to be on here. When I saw there was an invite from someone from Giles, I definitely couldn't say no. It's cool being able to. The accent sounds very familiar. Mine's faded over the years through the travel, but it's definitely feels like home coming on here. But yeah, so a little bit about me. I grew up kind of a hybrid life. So my dad was an Army officer, active duty, so we moved all over the country. But my family, both sides, are originally from Grayson County. So I didn't actually full-time live there until I went to Virginia Tech, and then I moved up there when I wasn't in school. But I spent all my summers back home. Both sides of the family have cattle operations, and so I grew up one with this rural lifestyle and the outdoors, and then the rest of it was living outside of military installations, kind of in the suburbs and these neighborhoods. And always, I couldn't wait to get back home to the farm, and that's where I've always considered home. I didn't actually go to high school in Grayson. I was in East Tennessee, a couple hours away, but very similar topography, and that's always been home to me. Just got back. I spent about 3 weeks back there. I was hoping to be able to do this one in person, but couldn't line it out. But I followed in my dad's footsteps. Like you said, I went to Virginia Tech, spent more time in the bars than I did in class. And, we were talking about Hokie House. That was definitely my spot. I was in the Corps of Cadets there at Tech, commissioned into the Army, went into the Army as an infantryman, and then kind of moved around. I got into hunting a little bit later in life. So I played, football my whole life, and that isn't very conducive with hunting season. Mm-hmm. And where I went in East Tennessee in a school called Maryville, it was kind of a full-time gig, year-round sport, very competitive on a state championship level. So we were just training year-round, and then we played deep into December. So I missed hunting season. I went sporadically when I was 15, 16, and didn't really have a mentor in that space. My dad had kind of skipped a generation. My grandpa was a casual hunter, right? As a lot of farmers are, targets opportunity or just to get them off the feed from the cattle. And then my dad did a little bit, but wasn't super into it. But it was my cousins that were very into it. And started hunting with them, started to learn about it. We kind of taught each other, which wasn't always the best. And so we had to figure it out on the fly growing up. And I thought I was a hunter for a long time. And it wasn't until it was my second deployment to Afghanistan. I was stationed at Fort Campbell. I missed that entire hunting season. My first deployment, I was a late deployer, so I didn't end up missing any of the fall. And it just kind of hit me like how much I loved it, not being able to hunt that season, like seeing like all the pictures from the family and my brother killed a nice buck on the farm and like all this stuff. And I was like, I'm going to take advantage of all this. I discovered meat eater on that deployment. So, growing up where we do, like the idea of public land isn't as big as it is out west, right? Like you always hear like, oh, you go to Jefferson National Forest, that's where you get shot. Like that's what, growing up, like, you have access to a family farm. That's where you're going to hunt. Maybe go over to a buddy's place. Like you're never going to go into national forest. That was always kind of the way I heard about it. But I was like, you know what? We get to hunt on Army installations. I'm going to try to do this. And I realized really quickly that I wasn't a hunter. I was a shooter. I knew how to hunt one piece of property and I knew how the deer moved there. I didn't know why they were doing it or how to read. And I also picked up a bow for the first time that season. And I don't think I've ever hunted that hard in my life. And I ended up killing a little doe with my bow. And it was like still to this day, one of the highlights of my hunting career. And that really just like lit the fuse for me. And like kind of what's become it's a lifestyle for me. It's my life. Like I don't have a hobby in hunting. Like it's just what I do. And that led me down the path of, this company and moving into that, but don't want to get too long winded, but that's kind of like how I grew up and kind of what set the stage for me to move into HLE.
All right. So how did you end up get us to Colorado? How did you end up out there?
Yeah. So I did my platoon leader time in the 101st at Fort Campbell when I was in the Army. And then I was trying to decide whether I was going to get out or not. I joked that I've been getting out of the Army for the last 8 years. And I decided to stay in. I volunteered to go down to at the time was Fort Benning, Georgia. It's now Fort Moore with the renaming of all the installations. And then was a basic training commander. Kind of got a second wind, really enjoyed my time, met some really cool guys, focused more on the hunting, was trapping pigs down there. We were talking about Lyle Avis before the podcast. He runs Tracking Dogs. So he was my neighbor. We'd go out, track together, and just like kind of built a community around it. And at that same time, we ended up getting a non-conduct, which is where the recruiting numbers didn't meet the operational side of running basic training cycles. So we didn't pick up a cycle. So I found myself during that 10-week period with a lot of time on my hands. And I'd been kind of playing the social media game a little bit. Was a brand rep for several different companies, just kind of chronicling my hunting story within social. And the way I grew, like I did not care about social media at all, but I had a buddy who got out of the Army from Fort Campbell, and he actually started a fitness account and blew it up and then leveraged that into a job getting out. And I was like, man, this is more than just something to like talk about yourself. There's something to this. And so I was like, oh, maybe I can get some discounts on some gear. Like it's expensive to hunt in all these different climates and everything. And didn't really have like probably the best of intentions. It was just more about like, I'm going to promote what I'm doing and myself. And so I was a brand rep for a bunch of companies, and I was getting tired of it because it was a lot of work to create content, and you're not getting the way the model works. I don't really love with the ambassadorships. Some companies really do it well. A lot of them don't. It's like, here's your 15% off, go create content. And when you look, or 20% off, or here's some free product, and you do the math on the hours, it doesn't make any sense. You're better off just driving for Uber and buying the gear yourself. And so I was like, this will be easy, right? I have a bigger following than a lot of these companies. I'm just going to start my own brand. And it wasn't easy, long story short. But I did. I started on a government computer. I made the original designs for HLE in clip art on PowerPoint. Got an embroidery machine and a sewing machine, made some canvas patches, sewed them on blank hats, started selling them through Instagram, launched a website, and then just kind of grew it from there while I was on active duty. I finished my time at Fort Benning right as COVID was hitting. And at that point, like my wife was, she should have. She thought I was kind of crazy, that I was going to be throwing away a lot of money into this whole endeavor. But it started to take off. It was kind of a little bit of, lightning in a bottle with COVID and the e-commerce blow up. And then a lot of people are trying to get into hunting, and all these things were happening at one time. And so like, I'm looking at it and we're selling out of products. Like we can't keep up. At this point, I wasn't making the product anymore. I had manufacturing. I was like, And we had just had a conversation when we were sitting there in quarantine. And I was like, are we going to make a go of this? And she was like, I mean, you should, like, it's here. So we decided to roll with it. And I got stationed in Fort Carson. I was a rifle company commander there in 1/8 Infantry. So it was mechanized. We were on Bradleys and stuff. When I was on staff, it was it was long days, but it was easier. I would get up at 4 a.m. before PT, do all the orders, get them prepped. And then on my lunch, I would go run them to the post office, drop them off, UPS, whatever. And then I would just do that day after day. Took command of my schedule, started getting to the office at 4. So my schedule started to get harder and harder. My wife took over fulfillment. We ended up bringing in one of her friends and then just kind of grew it. So that's really what took us to Carson. I tried to get out of the Army after I finished command. They told me no. So I left the family there. I went down to Louisiana for a year. And then I just got out fully in May of this year. That pulled me out of the Army. So now I'm full-time into HLE and the other stuff that we're doing. And yeah, that's kind of the cliff notes, the journey that took us up to this point.
Well, I will say, of course, like I said, I live in the woods or the water. I mean, if I'm off, the chances of you finding me in one of those two places is about 98%, unless my daughter's got the volleyball or horse show. That's where I'm at. And during COVID, I have never seen the influx of hunting people or fishing people. You used to know, you've been here. You could go to a stock stream and fish pretty much without running into a handful of people. And during COVID, you could not find a place on the creek that didn't have somebody standing in it already. And same thing with I'm not as fortunate as you. I have to hunt national forest for most of the things. And the first turkey season into COVID, there was people from New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, North Carolina. I was seeing a complete influx of people, not only in-state, but out-of-staters too, that were coming to these now. And I asked a couple of them, I'm like, well, how did you find this place? Because it's in the back of middle of nowhere. And they'd be like, oh, we pulled it up on X, or we pulled it up on Hunt Stand, or we just got on Google Earth and we found a nice place. It was National Forest, and here we go. So, I think your timing was probably perfect because and it's still even carried over. Like, even, we're how many 3 years post remove now, going on to 4 of COVID. Like, there's still a ton of people in the woods. I could turkey hunt the area that I turkey hunt on National Forest and very rarely run into somebody. And you can't even find a parking spot up there now.
Yeah, I saw the same thing in Colorado. It's wild. And it's a double-edged sword, right? As we need to have a long-term mindset when it comes to hunting and hunting rights. And like, we're in a fight in Colorado right now as they're trying to ban lion hunting, which I'd love to delve into in a bit. But like, it's good to have more people involved because we have a bigger voice, and it's good that we have, this influx of folks that weren't into this lifestyle, that I found it later in life, that it didn't get passed on because it's important. But at the same time, the opportunities get less and less, the pressure gets higher, across the board, and the price goes up, access, leases, guiding, trespass fees, all that stuff increases. And so, and that's what we're running into. Like, when we're seeing it right now with game and fish agencies, like, increasing their prices, like, fairly significantly, which, I'm a businessman. Like, I understand it. You have a scarce resource, the money goes back into the system, but it also, like, at a certain point within our model, it starts to teeter-totter where it's almost like this is an elitist sport. And I don't think that that's good either. So, like, it's something that we have to navigate. And I think you see, like, one side or the other, especially on social media, because we're so polarized, where everybody hates new hunters and thinks they shouldn't get into it and they want to gatekeep. And then there's people that are like, roll the red carpet out. We need everybody out there. And it's like, well, I think there's a happy medium where we need new folks coming in, but they need to understand the broader picture of the reason why we do this, the North American model, the conservation side, the ethical side, and be better hunters themselves. Because, like, I can't tell you how many hunts like last year I was hunting antelope with my cousin Perry, because he's actually moving back up to Grayson to Mount Wilson. But we were stalking antelope with the muzzleloaders in eastern Colorado, and like, we had 7 stalks blown by other hunters just walking straight through. And it's really hard not to get mad, and it's like, if you're getting into this, like, learn how to do it. And I don't think people should just like sit on the sidelines forever, but like find a mentor, find a community, find folks that can help you. Don't go to Facebook pages, but like learn what you're doing. So you're not, you understand the courtesy side and like the trail etiquette and like all this other stuff that goes into it. Cause we got to learn how to share the woods and share the mountain. Cause I mean, there's been conflicts. I've seen guys getting really heated. Like it can be a problem if we don't get ahead of it.
I think one of the things that I see that I don't like, and you just said it, is common courtesy. Like I've had 2 birds shot out from underneath me in the last 2 years. One was on National Forest where my car was parked at the gate. Like the guy walked right past it, heard me call and sat down and sat down in the holler before me. The bird just happened to fly off in between us and blast. Of course, he missed it. And then this year I was on my neighbor's property, private property, and the same thing. Somebody snuck over top, come in and blasted. I mean, scared the snot out of me. Scared me to death when that gun went off. So that common courtesy sometimes I think is missing, especially when you get an overload of hunters because everybody's out for their own.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the way that I think a lot of what I've found within the hunting industry and like on both sides, both like the forward facing with the end user and on the business side. And it really bothers me the more I plugged into the business side. And there's a lot of great companies that are doing things the right way, but like once the veil gets pulled back, it's like this zero sum game where like if you succeed, I fail. If you kill an animal, that's one less animal for me to kill. And it's like, that's not how this works. This is a renewable resource. There's always going to be another deer. There's always going to be another age class that's getting a year older. And like this gatekeeping and it's mine, it's my deer, like that completely goes against our model and the way we look at this, where our animals are held in a public trust and they're everybody's deer. And that's what sets us apart from like the European model with the king's deer and all that stuff. And I think that we always have to go back. And that's why like we talk about it a lot. Within our space is like, you need to know the why. Cause I didn't know that. I said I didn't have a mentor in the space. I didn't have a hunting license till I was like 24. Like I just didn't, and like, I thought rifle season was super long in Virginia. And I'll be totally honest about it. Like I just started hunting when I heard shots. So like later in life realized like I was hunting during muzzleloader season. Like I don't want my son to grow up and my daughter to grow up with that same loose ideas. Like they need to understand like now I don't need to buy a hunting license on my dad's place because of the way the laws work, but I do every year because I want to give back into the system. And like folks need to know that. And if they do, I think the context really helps shape how we act both on the trailhead and like with each other. And because we're our own worst enemy and we're being assaulted by all sides right now with folks that want to end this lifestyle. And if we can't look past that and work together because we love hunting and we love the idea that we can provide for our families. Like some states have it within their constitution, but the majority of states do not have hunting as a right. Like it is a privilege we are allowed. Now there's a deeper, philosophical on whether or not you think that it's a right or not, but like legally it's not in most states. And that's something that we have to understand and we have to work together to forward hunting and fight the people that want to take this lifestyle away entirely.
Yeah, and I know, like I said, I do want to touch on Colorado. We can do that at the end, but the people that are using non-science based, they're using emotion over science is what's killing us. And then there's enough people in high positions that can get stuff on the ballot or get stuff changed because their lack of knowledge or listening to the wrong side is not good for the hunting community at all.
100%. And so it's, ballot box biology where a lot of these states have, it's a democratic process where if you get enough signatures on an issue, you can push it up to a popular vote. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, several of these states, wildlife issues fall under that. And so that's how we ended up with the wolf reintroduction in Colorado, which I'm not actually inherent. Like I would probably be counter to a lot of folks. Like I'm not opposed to wolves in Colorado. I'm opposed to this plan. And then right now the big thing, and if you want to talk about it in a bit, we can deep dive onto it, but is the quote unquote trophy hunting of mountain lions, which means nothing. It's just playing to the emotion, like what you're talking about. And we've seen it that's how Colorado lost spring bear back in the 90s. It's how Washington State lost spring bear. It's kind of been like a holding pattern, if I remember correctly now. And it's a problem. And it creates second and third order effects within the ecosystem. Because like now we haven't had spring bear for 30 whatever years in Colorado. I say I've been here 4 years, but they can't give tags away. Like you spend $800 on an elk tag in Colorado, it's $50 to add a bear tag, and we're still not killing them enough because they're so hard to kill in the fall. You can't run them with dogs, you can't bait them, you can't kill them in the spring. You can only kill them in the fall, and that's the hardest time to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a black bear problem within the state, and I think Virginia. I mean, I've seen you. I mean, you're way more familiar with it than I am, but like we've never seen the bear activity that we've seen on our places. Like we can't hang a trail cam right now without a bear smashing it. We're getting a couple pictures a day of bears. We're trying to, but not being able to bait in Virginia is a problem because like unless you're in like on a 400-acre piece of ground, like you can't really run them with dogs unless you get lucky because you're just going to run them off the property. And if we can't bait, one, we can't selectively harvest, and then two, we can't attract them with any sort of consistency. It's just luck if you stumble across one. And so I could go on the whole tangent about that, obviously.
No, you're right. But I know you guys probably haven't seen it yet, but I don't know if you've heard the issue with mange. It started in Pennsylvania, and it kind of worked its way down to the Shenandoah National Park, and it has literally devastated the population in a couple of those counties surrounding the park. And it is traveling south at a pretty good clip. And I don't know who I told this to the other day. Oh, I was talking to one of my friends in West Virginia, and they said they are starting to see it. I've seen 3 bear this year with mange, and I normally don't see any, much less 3. If you see one every couple of years, that's it'll weed itself out. But I've seen 3 already this year, and the DWR is kind of refusing to do anything about it. They're wanting to do another study. Well, we've got enough documentation and science behind the Pennsylvania study and some other states that's got studies, and we really feel like that. Well, I won't say that because I don't want to get everybody riled up, but they're refusing. But I feel like in the next year or two, Luke, your family in Grayson is going to start. You're going to see mange, and it's going to take a toll on y'all's population because it's headed south. It's going to work its way into North Carolina and Tennessee. Like I said, it's already crossing the mountain over into West Virginia. And you're right. I've been hunting bear for 30 years. And the first couple years that I hunted, if you caught 5 bear in a year, you had some darn nice dogs. And then that 2005 to 2007, it's like, boom, here they come. And it's been a very good population ever since then. And you're looking at 16, 18 years, and it's been doing really well. But the last 3 years, if you start looking at the numbers through the harvest rates, it's slowly decreasing. And a lot of that goes into effect of the season. They implemented the early hound season. 46% of the harvest rate is sows. Youth Day, I think it's over 50% sows. And then you have early bow season and muzzleloading season, which they opened, and a lot of that is sow. So when you take that sow out, now if it's an older sow, like you said it on the bait, that you can selectively harvest. Mm-hmm. If it's an older sow, it needs to be removed from the breeding pool, then that's fine. But when you're killing these 2 and 3 year old sows that haven't even started to repopulate yet, I mean, you're taking 10 bear out of the equation in 5 years. Like you're just there's 10 bear, and you take another sow, and there's 10 bear. You cannot keep up with the rate that we are going in our harvest rate with sows to replenish the population, and we are fighting that kind of now here in Virginia. So I'm with you on that. I mean I'm at odds with a lot of things that's going on, but. I don't know how we're going to fix it. We're trying, but I don't know how.
Yeah, it's hard. In Colorado's in the exact, like Virginia, Colorado, there's a lot of similarities with, a small portion of the geographical landmass of the state controls the rest of the state politically. And that's how the Front Range of Colorado controls a wide expanse, to go one side. And I don't want to get political, but it's like typically there's a certain side that wants to manage this stuff in a way that I don't think is always conducive for both the population and the end user. And it's a struggle, and I don't really know what the fix is. It's one of the reasons why, like, we're moving to Wyoming actually at the end of this month because I want to get out of Colorado, and it's one of the reasons why I don't want to move back to Virginia. Is I just don't want to be in the political landscape, the taxes, everything else. Like, Wyoming's the least amount of taxes in the country, a lot of freedom, and the best resident hunting stuff, and you can still hunt spring bear. You can still run bait sites.
It's funny you say Wyoming. One of my good friends literally texted me this week, and he sent me a picture out, and he said, "This is my new front door view." And I'm like, "Where are you at?" And he moved to Wyoming. I knew he was looking for property, but I didn't know, that he was moved. But he's packed up, and that's where he's at.
Yeah, it's I love it. I've spent a lot of time there. I've hunted there every year other than the year I was deployed when I was been out west, and it's just a cool place. It feels very much the same type of people that we have in southwestern Virginia, and the state as a whole is very, like, hunting is part of their constitution, and I think that's important. But yeah, back to it's hard because, like, what we've seen in Grayson is, like, the bears are becoming problematic. Like, we've never had the issues with the numbers to where they're getting to the barn lot. They're, my dad with the predation on calves, that's increased. And, like, he's like, kill every bear you can see. And I'm like, well, Dad, I think there's limits to this. And, like, it's not like the old days. Like, now I really follow all these rules, and I get his perspective because he's running cattle. And there's got to be some sort of balance here to where we can manage the population, keep the numbers where they need to be, selectively harvest those mature ones. So we have a younger, age class that's producing, stronger populations, limit the numbers so we can keep the mange down. Because you're mentioning the mange. We saw a bear, and that actually, like, I think it had mange. Like, that was the first, like, we have a group chat between all the guys that hunt on the one property, and my cousin dropped a picture, and then my other cousin was like, dude, that's a mangy looking bear. And I didn't know if it was just a season change or what, but I'll see if I can scrounge the picture up. I'll shoot it to you and get your expert opinion, because it may already be in Grayson. It didn't look right. It looked a little emaciated and kind of patchy. So.
Well, and there's two types of mange too. The sarcoptic mange is what's hurting us. That's the mite that gets underneath the skin. And of course, we could go on a tyrant here, but it's pretty much, if they get it and it's bad enough, there's no fixing it. It's done. So yours may have the other type, and I'd have to look it up to see what it is. But yeah, so you may have it already too, which is unfortunate because your dad's worries about bear won't be there. He'll have to pick them up somewhere and get rid of them because they're just dying. So
yeah, it dovetails into the whole CWD thing too, and how some areas are managing it, some aren't, and some of it's overblown, and some of it's not. Just all this stuff is like this teeter-totter of information. It's overwhelming sometimes.
Well, and you talk about your dad's farm. We have said this numerous times to our bear team. There are two different management areas. The Bear National Forest, we aren't seeing the numbers that you're seeing on the farms. Mm-hmm. They have went to these farms, and like I said, I don't know the acreage. I don't know. I know y'all have Grayson Highlands and everything, but like trying to get out of people's property that, like you said, I turn loose on 200-acre farm. My dogs are 4 farms over treed, which, the farmers don't want your dogs in there because they feel like they're running their cattle and everything else. So you've got 2 different management areas for bear in Virginia, and I don't think they're listening to us when we tell them that. Like, the bear on national, you can't just open season up for the national forest because you're going to wipe them out. Mm-hmm. Now, if you open season up and let give people, there's been a mention of 2 tags and this and that on private land, then that's different, because the population on your dad's place and the local farms around me, like these guys have never seen bear, and like you said, they're eat up with them because the bear have learned that I can get away from the hounds if I'm on private property. The food source is phenomenal, between the trees and the fruit trees, and if they're getting to the silage and the corn, like corn gets devastated around here. I'm sure you guys are seeing that too. So It's 2 different management areas, and we've tried to explain that to them, and I just don't think it's sinking in.
No, I think that's a great point. And, if I could wave a magic wand, I think we need to be able to bait. And I used to be super anti-baiting until I learned more about it. And I've hunted, all over the country and realized what it actually is. It's just a tool. It's not even that effective sometimes, but like being able to bait so we can do like on private, I think is important. And then managing the limits and what we're taking off national forests. I never really thought about it that way, but I think it's spot on that it is two completely different management structures, because we are like, I remember the first year we saw a bear on my mom's side of the family farm, and my cousin and I like ran down and like got in front of it so we could like watch it, because like we'd never seen a bear on the property. And now like we saw two when I was up there. And then the trail cam photos are just, you see the bear and then you see a picture of it swiping the camera. It's like, God bless. They're so curious. It's cool. And like, I don't want bears gone, but I want them managed to where they're not a nuisance, because what's going to happen, and it's the same thing with wolves in Colorado, is if they're not managed properly, the farmers and the ranchers are going to take it into their own hands. And that's not what we want. That doesn't go within our model. It's wasting the resource, but you can't fault them for taking care of their livelihood. And so like the game and fish agencies have to come in and work with the agriculture side to create this balance so we can both pursue it. Because a lot of times you have like the hunter versus the rancher, the farmer, and like I'm in this like weird in between where I'm very plugged into both sides of it. It's like we can all coexist where you have the relationship, and because farm to ground is better for the ecosystem in general, usually if it's managed properly. And so if we can work together, and it's happening in certain areas in certain states, and a lot of the programs out west are great for that, but we can do a better job across the board. If we can get the politics out, we're only doing science-based management. That's really what we have to do. Get rid of the politics, listen to the biologists. Like there's a gag order in Colorado. The game and fish guys can't even talk about wolves or lions. They're not allowed to publicly speak on it, give their opinion, do anything. So like the public doesn't even get the perspective from the professionals, from the state officials. It's 100% up to the propaganda machine that's coming out from the anti-hunters. And it's an issue.
Well, while we're on it, because I know I want to talk about the HLE. Let's just get the cat stuff out of the way. Let's talk about it. We're hitting all around it. Let's just get it.
Yeah. So what's going on right now is there's an organization that started from a non-native Coloradan. I think she's from Washington or Oregon originally. Go figure. Lives in Boulder. Also go figure. It all tracks. But she started an organization called Cats Aren't Trophies. And so the big push right now is to ban the killing of, she's calling it trophy hunting, of mountain lions, of bobcats, and of lynx, which is hilarious because you can't actually kill lynx anyways. And it's when you look at like what it is, it's totally sensationalized. It's an emotionally driven argument. And they're also just like straight up lying. Like one of their big posters that they have is like, what mountain lions self-regulate the population. You don't need to harvest them, all this other stuff. And they only kill the CWD sick animals, and they don't, kill more. It's just this whole thing. And so what's happened is they just got the signatures that they needed, which is unfortunate because we thought we might be able to keep it from going to ballot. But now in November, it's going to ballot. So we've been working with Dan Gates from Colorado for Responsible Wildlife Management. I've become really good friends with Dan over the last few months. One of the most intelligent, strategic level, guys that's leading this fight right now. And he's doing 90% of the legwork to combat this. And I wish we were in a position to do more. But coming on and talking about this, Save the Hunt. Let me confirm this because I want to push this out to your listeners. I think it's Save the Hunt Colorado.
It is. Yeah. I'm familiar with all this. Yes.
So Save the Hunt Colorado is the name of his website. And so I highly if you guys, I'm assuming a lot of your listener base might not be from Colorado, but this goes far beyond Colorado. Like this isn't the way that the antis, they look at this as a series of campaigns. And so they're going after the low-hanging fruit. They're going after trapping. They're going after predator hunting. They want to reintroduce wolves. And so when you look at this higher level strategic thinking, it's like, and you can walk the dog on this to where, okay, we reintroduce wolves into Colorado, right? So we have a population of wolves that can manage the large population of ungulates, right? Supposedly the largest elk herd in Colorado. That's debatable, or in the world, that's debatable. And then also you start banning lion hunting. Well, now you've got these predators on the landscape that are killing in such numbers. you look at this 5-10 years down the road, and like eventually there will reach some equilibrium because the populations of these animals will adapt. But what happens is when, like with the wolf reintroduction, backing up a little bit from the cats, when you're dropping these pockets of wolves into these areas where the ungulates haven't evolved over the course of time to be able to adapt to the predation, to fire up those natural instincts, they don't have that. They have it within like their DNA deep. They don't have it immediately. So they'll kill off large numbers of these animals very quickly. And so like the current plan is to drop 250 wolves within the state, all over the state. And they're also coming from these packs. So like, and it's really like, it may not actually work out the way they want to, because some of the areas that have said they're going to give the wolves are pulling out. But like Oregon gave the last batch of wolves, or the first batch of wolves, excuse me. And so now there's a breeding population. They've actually created a pack, which means they've laid litters of pups. They've actually had some predation against them through different causes, and so they're actually relocating them to a different location to try to get them to take hold. But the ungulate population starts to swing as they start to get killed. And when you look at the historical range of elk aren't a mountain species the way we see them today. They're actually more of a plains animal that would migrate up into the mountains, into the high country when it got hot, and they would come back into the plains. Well, now they can't do that because you've got I-25 running down the entire Front Range of Colorado that is in a wall of neighborhoods, basically from Pueblo to Fort Collins, that blocks their migration. So they've adapted to stay within the mountains. Well, then they used to winter in the moose as well. They would drop down into the lower elevations. Well, now in Colorado, you've got a ski town in damn near every valley within Colorado. So they don't have those natural areas to get away from the animals. Well, if they're hanging out at higher elevations than they historically would, a 600-pound bull or, 1,000-pound moose, these animals can't move on top of the snow. So if they're in deep snow, a wolf can move on top of the snow because it's significantly lighter. So they can kill at a much higher rate than they would have without these other mitigating factors. And you don't have the wide expanse of wilderness in Colorado that you have in Montana, in Idaho, even Wyoming, where you've got these huge centers. Like hunting in Colorado on public land, you can't go deep enough before you start shortening like the distance on the outside of the area. We don't have the expanses that you have in these other states. And so when you look at it from a predation standpoint, there's going to be a large kill off. Like it's just inevitable. And if you take cougar management and mountain lion management, they will kill at a higher rate too. They kill us. I don't want to quote the numbers because I'm rusty, but they kill a significant amount of deer and elk, primarily deer, and then they'll predate on calves. But like per year, if they will actually kill more animals when there's a wolf presence, which I found extremely fascinating because the wolves will trail the cats. And so you'll see a cat kill an animal to leave it so the wolves get off its trail and scavenge that deer, and then they'll go on. So they'll actually kill at a higher rate. And so if I'm a strategic level person who wants to see the banning of the entire, hunting ecosystem, if I can attack those low-hanging fruit where it's an easy emotional response, now I can start to shape the narrative to where within the North American model, because the populations don't support it, we actually can't hunt and we don't have an argument anymore because the predation is happening at such a high rate from the predators. That's kind of their strategic level. And it's not just in Colorado. Washington, Oregon, they're hitting all these states where the political divide is high, so they can use those as the battleground states. But the overall intent, and they've been transparent, and Dan will talk about this, and he's got the sound bites. Some of they're not all within the same level of extreme, but the far extreme of these folks, they want to ban owning a dog, of agriculture, of any sort of animal husbandry. They think that animals, like it is like a true extremist mentality, and that their end state is that they want to see the complete and total banning. Now, is that realistic? Probably not, but that's where they want to go, and they're willing to do and say whatever they can to get there. So like Cats Not Trophies is not a super huge organization, but they're funded by some of these other, and this is what happens is when one of these fights starts, these other organizations will come in the backside for consulting, funding, legal stuff, propaganda. So like Carol Baskins from Tiger King is actually involved in this. A couple of the other larger anti-hunting organizations are involved, and it's wild. And like when you look at what actually happens when you ban mountain lion hunting, California is the poster child for this.
Yep.
So you can't kill cats in California. The state kills more cats in California now than were killed when
They had the quota, right?
And they use paid killers. They come in there, they kill them, and they leave them. And so, if you guys aren't familiar with mountain lion hunting, it's not trophy hunting. Like, people eat cats. It sounds weird for everybody to think about, but like mountain lion meat, when you talk to the old guys that do this, that's their favorite meat because it's a lot like pork. And so it's like a delicacy within the space. And it's a small percentage of hunters that actually hunt mountain lions. And so it becomes very easy for us to be like, well, I don't hunt cats. I'm never going to go hunt a mountain lion out west. I don't care. What you guys, that are listening need to understand, this will come to your state eventually, and it's going to come to your species eventually. And so that's why we have to have this unified front, to combat this. And so, like, Dan Gates, like, I'm very selective with who we partner with and who I'll endorse, because I've gotten burned with nonprofits in the past. I can't speak more highly of Dan, what he's doing with CRWM and the strategic level of like insight that he has and how deep he's looking out. If we can defeat this ballot, we're no longer on the defensive. He's got a whole plan for us to keep going. So, like, your dollars don't end with this fight. If you guys go and, like, anything helps, like $20, $10, $15, like, all the money goes back into the fight. He's running paid ads on social. He's bringing in people that don't look like him. That's what he realized. Like, he looks like a grizzled mountain man. Like, he looks like the dude on this picture back here. So he brings in, like, young women who are hunters that get up there and to be a voice, and moms and people that care about this, that don't look like the stereotypical hunter that gets demonized across Disney and all these other things. So that's my pitch. If you guys are gonna do anything, like, definitely get involved, because this fight is big. And then educate yourself so you can talk about it, because when you're just sitting there and having conversations with folks in your network that don't hunt, like, being able to clearly articulate why we do what we do is so important into spreading the message and, like, keeping us moving forward in the right direction. Because it's a fight, and, like, it's not going to end. Like, this is, I'd say the first battle was Spring Bear, which we lost unequivocally, but we only lost the wolf reintroduction by a handful of votes, which tells me that we're, like, this close. And if we can just come together as an organization, or as an industry, I guess, for lack of a better term, and move forward together, we can push back on this. There's sometimes a fatalist attitude of, like, they're just going to win, but we have science and facts on our side. And if we can get through the emotional BS and the propaganda and, like, lay it out, like, that's the most important part. All right, I'm off my soapbox.
No, that's all good information. And like I said, we're very vested in Colorado. All of my listeners will know about it because we're hound hunters, and we're hound hunters from all over the United States. So, I've got people in Oregon and California and Colorado and New Mexico and Arizona listening. So everybody's very in tune with what's going on. Dan, I don't know who posted the video. I think it was Dan on Instagram here this week, and he had somebody testifying about being able to manage, pick out the tracks and not harvest the females, and it was very informational, the stuff that he's putting out, and I think everybody's behind it. And in fact, the day that I seen it pop up, come on the ballot, that it was going to be on the ballot, I text Naomi Harsh, and she works for Sportsman's Alliance, because I know they're in this fight too. And I was like, I thought it was not going to go, and she's like, yeah, we're all disappointed to see that pop up. So yeah, we're all with it. And Luke, that's one thing that it's hard to get the deer hunters and turkey hunters and everybody on the same page with the hound hunters, and vice versa, because what happens in Colorado is going to come to Virginia next. Mm-hmm. We all know that. And I went on a rant on one of my podcasts last week. I got a rough number of 190,000 hound hunters in the state of Virginia. Okay. DWR put out a 2-week comment period about the trespassing while hunting. We have the right to retrieve law, but they're trying to pass it because the landowners, 13 of them, those 13 landowners, have been fussing about people turning loose in the middle of the road and then running through their 15 acres, which we got to police ourselves. We shouldn't be doing that. Whoever's doing that shouldn't be doing that. But anyway, a rough number of 190,000 hound hunters, and we got 369 comments. So one of my buddies, me and James, started posting it on our social media, and before the week was over, we had a little over 1,200. but still 1,200 out of 190,000 guys. It's in your backyard, and you better defend what you got. And they're not. They're not doing it. It's like, how do we get these people to understand that we all have to do this together. We all have to get in this, and we've got to work together and take care of this. And it's hard to get everybody on the same page.
Yeah, it is. And I was talking to one of my buddies. He owns Infinite Outdoors, which is a private land access app, and Sam Seaton, and he worded it the best way that it kind of made sense to me. Is just like, when you look at the opposition, they have a collectivist mentality, and that's why it's so easy to get them to come together to back stuff. When you look at folks that live our lifestyle, we're very individualistic, right? Individual rights. We want to live our life. We want to be left alone, and so we have that mentality to a fault. And like, I have that, right? Like, I just want to hang out with my friends and my family, do cool stuff, try to make a little money, make a living, and like live life. But if we don't come together, if we don't realize that we can lose this and get involved and, look a little bit more collectivist, not on a, extreme level, but like to the point that we're all in this fight together, we're going to implode. And we're seeing it, and there's so much infighting, like who hunts this with that, the bow hunters versus the gun hunters versus the trad hunt. Like, the fact that like trad hunters and bow hunters fight, and then God forbid you run a crossbow, and then, oh, your hunt rifle, it's easy. Like, it's just like, oh my gosh, like, what are we doing? We're all just hunters. We're all here to do this. Like, if you hunt over bait, you suck. If you do this, and like, it's just, you see it all the time, and we see it in our comments. Like, we get more hate from other hunters than we do from anti-hunters, and it's like, why are we doing this? We're all here because we're passionate about the same thing. We have to work together to better it, to educate each other, and to save it, because we will lose it, and it might take 5 years, it might take 10 years, it may take 50, but I want my son and my daughter, who are 3 and 1, to be able to do this to the level that I am. And they're not going to be if we keep going the rate we're going.
Nope. I've said the same thing. I want my kids and, grandkids to be able to enjoy the things that I've enjoyed, because hunting and fishing has kept me out of trouble through life. It has got me through hard times. That solidarity, going out and being able to clear your mind and, work off a little stress, taking a long hike through the mountain. Like that means more to people than I think some people actually give it credit for. And to be taken away is just senseless.
It is. And to that point, I mean, that's one of our core tenets within HLE is we believe that like community and, time in the natural world is like healing. Like, obviously with the military background that I have, like the mental health aspect, like first responders are often, unfortunately overlooked in that. The military gets all the press, but, law enforcement, EMS, they're dealing with this stuff day in and day out. And then just the general stress, like we are the most medicated society in the history of the world for anxiety, depression. Like, it's like 70% of folks are dealing with some sort of mental health disorder. It's like, if you eat clean, eat the way we're supposed to eat, you get physically fit, you surround yourself with a group of like-minded folks, and you spend time outside, I bet 90% of your problems will dry up right there. And it's that, and like, we cannot lose this. Like, I don't know what I would do if I couldn't hunt. I would just still hunt. I'll be honest. Like, that's my line in the sand. Like, I will follow every law as long as it's within purview, but like, I'll say it right now. Like, I'm not going to stop at a certain point. And they, like, I have to, like, it's not an option for me. Like, it's more unnatural for us as humans not to hunt to not hunt than it is to hunt at this. It's crazy that they would take that from us, but that's what they want.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue. So let's get into HLE, hunt, lift, eat. Let's get into that. Let's tell us what that's about, Luke. Like what your company is, what it means. Like I said, I went through several phases in my life, and more than ever, like I want to be. I don't need to be, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I just want to be able to be fit. Like my doctor, I had to get on high blood pressure medicine. That's what started me back to the gym to start with. He did tell me, he said, Heath, the day you retire, you'll be off the medicine. And I'm like, I believe that. So, but he told me I need to lose a bunch of weight and I need to do this. And we stopped eating out. I packed my lunches. I try to eat, like you said, I try to eat as clean as I got 3 freezers downstairs. Everything we harvest from fish, stripers, trout, catfish, we keep it, we eat it. bear, deer, turkey, like everything. We don't buy meat out of the store. The only meat that we buy is chicken here and there. Everything else, it's either raised on the farm at my dad's and we harvest it, or it's something that we have harvested ourselves that we eat. So I do try to eat as clean as possible. But yeah, what you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I said, I started this and like, I wish I had some grand design about what I called it. My personal Instagram name at the time was Hunt, Lift, Eat, because those are the three things that I did in life. It's like all I did. At the time, phase of the life, I probably could have added drink on the end of it. Since, gotten out of that life. But I like to lift heavy. I was doing some powerlifting stuff. I hunted a lot, and then I ate a lot of game meat. I did a lot of cooking, smoking. I was trapping all those pigs. So I was experimenting with different ways, and that's really how it started. Right, it was just these three things that I loved, and I never expected the number of people that it would resonate with. And it's one of the cool things is like you'll see it at expos. Folks will walk by and they won't give it a second glance, or they stop in their tracks and they're like, "This is me. This is what I do. It's the three things." Mm-hmm. And so that was, it was cool. I forced my way into that, but that's really what we were built around. Well, fast forwarding a little bit, I mentioned previously how I didn't like the ambassador model. Mm-hmm. And like selfishly, I saw the writing on the wall. Like I knew that I was going to be getting out of the Army at some point. I wasn't going to be a lifer. I'd watched my dad transition out, a lot of my buddies listening to podcasts to guys, and there tends to be a period of isolation when you get out, right? Because the machine keeps moving without you. And like all your buddies that you think you're going to be friends with for the rest of your life, like you just lose touch. And like I was thinking about like guys that I was crazy close with, they got out of the Army and I barely talked to them. And so I was fortunate enough to like look ahead of it. And I was like, if I just get out, I've been a team sports guy my whole life. I did 4 years in the Corps Cadets at Tech, where you're living in tight proximity with the boys, and like then going into an infantryman, which is very tight knit unit at the lower levels. I was like, I'm gonna spiral, and I could see myself going down that path of alcohol, isolation, all the negatives around it, and I wanted to figure out a way to like build a community around what we were doing. And so at the time we called it the A Team, and it was like our version of a pro staff. But it was like my cousins that I grew up with, guys in the Army that we all shared hunting, and guys I had met through social media that became, very close friends. We came together as like a group around the lifestyle. And so we'd train when we would get together. We'd do deer camps at my farm in Virginia. We'd go on hunts. We were trapping pigs. We were doing all this lifestyle stuff. And it was really cool. And I was building that sense of camaraderie that would transcend my time in the Army, and it was totally selfish. And I also wanted it for those guys as well. Well, I kept having folks reaching out, and they wanted to be involved. They wanted to be ambassadors and all this. And I was like, I don't like that model. I don't want to do it. And so I just wanted to flip the model on its head a little bit, because like, what does a young company need with the inventory costs and all that? Maybe some revenue. And so we did a paid model to build this community, but I didn't take that lightly, that like people were giving us their hard-earned money. And so I wanted to provide a significant amount of value back to those users. And so we started what we call now our team program, which last July we launched an app. And so like we have this whole community. We're like 400 and some members across the US and Canada. And we get together in person for in-person events. There's regional meetups and groups. We have some mentorship stuff. We do hunts. We do a seminar every month where we're talking about hunting, fitness, nutrition. Me or one of the other guys has a mindset call at the end of every month where we're talking about nothing with hunting. It's like living a purpose-driven life, entrepreneurship, goal setting, vision mapping, like things that'll like progress you, because I believe in a holistic approach. And so we've just tried to build a space where like people can ask questions without getting smashed in the comments. They can reach out. They can build real relationships. There's like a vetting process that we go through, so we're getting the right people. And we just want to build a community. And like that became the center of gravity of what the company is. Like the t-shirts and the merch is fine and it's cool, and that's kind of the window dressing. But the team program is like the center of what we do. We actually shut off new applications because we grew too fast. We actually outgrew some of our ability to manage it. So we're like restructuring everything on the back end now. But yeah, I mean, that's really what Hunt, Lift, Eat is. Hunt, Lift, Eat is. It's a community for folks that are like-minded, that share a high value set, that can be a glue. And like people that I've met through this company are like my best friends, like, and through the team. Carter's my daughter's godfather, and we met on Instagram. Like, it's crazy. Like, our wives still call them our social media boyfriends. And but when you can share something around a passion and have that foundation of a relationship, and then have that same value set of morality and ethics, and like where you're at, and in a time where I think society has a lot of ethical drift across the board, I think it's really important to have hard lines for like who you are. And if you don't have that, you just are floundering. And when you surround yourself with people that'll keep you in check and accountable and moving forward, like it's when I look back when I started this in 2019 out of my attic selling hats that I made. Like, fast forward, it's just 5 years. It's like we're looking at a commercial building in Laramie. Like, we've got folks moving in. It's a testament to the people we have around us, not to anything I've done. I've just like had a vision, and I haven't messed up so bad that I've bankrupted us. And like, that's my only claim to fame. And that's just really who we are and what we're about. And like, so our 3 tenets are community, craft, and conservation. So the community side, I kind of just hit on. The craft side comes into the education. It comes into the training, keeping your body right, your physical fitness, your nutrition. What are you doing? Like, broadening your skill set, both as a hunter, as a conservationist, as a marksman, like all these things, just getting better and better. And then on, the conservation piece as a whole, it's getting involved in the stuff we were just talking about, these fights, like being an activist in a positive way, not an extremist, but having an active voice, talking to game and fish agencies. And like, we're getting to the point now where we're able to finally start, putting some of our dollars and money where our mouth is. So like, we're working to put 5% of all of our sales going to CRWM. And, in the future, we want to broaden that out, but like right now, the focus is on Colorado. And so that's really like who we are and what our tenets are. Cause I think we've got so many problems within our society. Like, I want to make money and I would love to grow this into a super, successful large business, but it's a lot deeper than that for me. It's like, what are we doing as people? And can we build a community within the community that is high value, that can go back and be leaders and affect some change at a grassroots level? Because if not, like, I don't know what direction our country's going to go. But yeah, that's kind of the down and dirty of HLE and what we're all about.
Yeah, and I think that's what caught my attention because, hunting. Like I said, I wasn't big. I wasn't big into the lifting, but hunting and fishing, eating what we provide for ourselves is huge and it's always been that way in my life. It's not like you said, it's a way of life. It's just not a thing. Yeah. We've done it for since I took my first animal, whatever that may have been. Growing up with 5 brothers and sisters, like the deer actually, that fed us for a long time. Back then, that was a lot. So that's what caught my attention. And then the lift part, working out, keeping yourself in shape. And I get it all the time that, the better care you take of yourself, the longer you can be on this earth. And that's important to me, for the ones that are around me, my children. Like, I do want to be here as long as I possibly can. And I want to be able to, walk, get out, and whatever you do, I don't want somebody to have to take care of me. So that changed my mindset a little bit. And that's why I got back in the gym, doing the things that I'm doing. And like I told you before, I told my CrossFit coach, I'm like, CrossFit sucks. He's like, what do you mean? I said, I walk 6.6 miles a day and I couldn't hardly make it back to the truck. It killed me. And he was like, yeah, but just think, if you hadn't been in CrossFit, you couldn't have made it 6. I said, yeah, I would have made it. I said, because it's completely different than what I'm doing in here. But I can feel the difference now. Like, I can, there's a couple things that's a little bit easier. My legs aren't getting tired like normally when you're pulling these mountains. You walk up a ridge and your calves are burning or your thighs are about to fall off. And, I don't feel that way right now. So it is helping. But, man, that day that I did that hike, and I know 6.6 miles is nothing, but you've been in the laurel thickets and crawled through them things and down through the creeks. And, I had to get around a big old ledge down in this laurel thicket. And then we got into bees. It was like, man, it pushed every button I had that day. So that's why I got back into it. But like I said, that's what caught my eye when I pulled this up, with your stuff. And then, like I said, when I seen you as hometown, I was like, that's even better.
No, yeah, it's awesome. I love that we're able to do this. But to the fitness piece, and I feel like I've been on a soapbox this whole podcast. I'm not an expert at anything. I'm out of shape right now compared to how I normally am. The business and the travel is worn on me. As my life slows down here post move, I've got the same mark on the thing. It's like I got to get back into it, and I got my goals set. And I think that that's important too, is to understand the season of life that you're in. And sometimes you can't do everything at once, but it's like pick something. And I used to be this, I'm going to do it all at once, right? Like I'd quit drinking, I would eat super clean, and I would start hitting the gym. And like when I'm a boulder, like once I start moving, it's hard to stop my direction. But the second it stops, it's hard for me to keep going and pick it back up. And so I would do this ebb and flow where I would get in like extremely good shape, and then I would fall off and I would taper. And what I've really been trying to do is like change my overall mindset of like, it's like this year I quit drinking. I haven't had a drink since December of last year. And not sure if it's for life, but just decided that with my goals and everything that I'm wanting to do, it's not conducive with where I'm trying to go in life. And so I just walked away from it. And then it's like, can I maintain my, my nutrition through all this travel? And like I've gained a little bit through the last month of travel, but like I used to would have just ballooned up 15 pounds. So it's really easy for me to hold muscle. It's really easy for me to put on fat. It's just my mountain bred genetics, I guess. I'm lean times. And but like having this like long-term mindset of where I don't have to do it all at once has really shifted, and I can like almost forgive myself for a mistake to where I don't sit there and have to beat myself up and then just be like, oh, screw it, and fall off the wagon entirely. And so like if you're sitting there and you're like, no, you need to lose some weight, you don't have to just jump into like one of our programs or something like that. Like start with just like cleaning up your diet, and to start with that, just focus on your protein. Like hit your body weight in grams of protein per day, ideally from like whole sources. You can do some supplementation if you need it, but game meat is like the fastest way. Like deer, like whitetail and elk and mule deer, like deer and elk are just like, it's insane the calorie to protein ratio. And so if you're already living that life, like it's perfect. Build that as a staple. Hit your macros, right? You don't even need to worry about the other stuff. Don't eliminate everything. You don't have to go keto. You don't have to go carnivore. You don't have to do anything crazy. Eat your protein first. You're going to eat less across the board, and then just move. Like start going into the woods. Like my uncle actually, he's trying to get back into it. He's not even hitting the gym. He's just hitting the hills back home, like walking trails, clearing trails. Build up some momentum, and then you can start moving into gym, training and like doing all these things. But you don't have to do it all at once. But exactly to your point, everything is easier when you're fit. Like everything. And in the whitetail woods, there's the joke, especially among the Western hunters, about whitetail fit, which is like fat guys sitting in a tree stand, Twinkies and ho-hos, which, I mean, there's an element to that, right? Like
it's Little Debbie's, Luke.
Little Debbie's, yeah, it is Little Debbie's. Used to eat a lot of the little Star Crunch.
Christmas trees, yeah.
Christmas trees, zebra cakes. My grandma would fatten me up on zebra cakes. But being able to hunt public, go in a little bit deeper, carry your tree stand, your rig, or your saddle, whatever you're running with, or chasing hounds, or dragging out a deer. Like you want to know how not fit you are, get down on one of those hollers and drag a good sized deer out of that, even a small doe. Yeah, like it's brutal. And so everything's easier when you're fit. It will increase your longevity. It'll help with your mental health. If you're having like, and I want to harp on mental health a little bit because I don't think we as men talk about it enough. Mm-hmm. I've really been opening up a lot more about it. If you're having issues, like start with just some momentum physically, and you would be shocked. Get some sunlight, get outside and walk, do these little things. And then as you got that momentum going, look at a trainer or a coach or some programming or something like that, because like get into CrossFit. Like I've got a love-hate with CrossFit. I used to do it a lot. CrossFit Blacksburg there and outside the town. Yeah, I used to run with all those guys a lot, and great gym. And I got spoiled. That was the problem. They were very well programmed. And then I went to other gyms that weren't. And that's my biggest issue, is the inconsistency across CrossFitting training. But yeah, so building it across the board and knowing you don't have to do it all at once and within your lifestyle change. I think that's like the number one lesson I've learned over the last couple of years.
Yeah. And you were talking about the protein, the grams, I've been trying to do that. And I know I've been sitting here drinking water the whole time. Like my water intake, I had a 26 ounce Yeti, and I got a 46, and I'm drinking almost 2 of those a day now. But I was making myself at first, but the more I worked out, it seemed like I wanted it. So
Mhm.
it's become very easy. So
Yep.
my water intake has definitely changed. And, I feel like, to say I feel better, I mean, I do, but I think that's the part of the working out part. But I'm not always, I'm not, I've never been a big, drinking pop or soda, whatever you call it. Sweet tea in the South, in southwestern Virginia is my nemesis, and I could drink gallons of it. And I've cut back on it so much, and been supplementing everything with water. So I'm trying to get there. And one of my partners that I work with him, and he does CrossFit too. We were at CrossFit one evening, and he's like, well, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "I'm not where I want to be." And he's like, "Heath, you've not done this for a long time." And I was like, "I know, but I feel like with my abilities, that I should be doing more." And he's like, "Just give it some time. Give it 6 months." And of course, I'm not 6 months in yet, but he's like, "Give it 6 months," and he said, "You'll get there." So what you're saying about it don't have to be done in a day is very accurate.
Extending your time horizon for everything, I think, is one of the most important, like business, like fitness, like the goal, like falling in love with the process, right? Like not worrying about just the end result. Like I want to sit here at 10% body fat with a six pack, looking like I'm 23 again. It's, can I fall in love again with training, with working out, with paying attention to my diet, being mindful of my eating, all these different things? Can I fall in love with the process of building my business versus the end state of making X amount of dollars, right? I used to be very focused on hitting these number metrics and that's just vanity. It's just ego built in. And it's the same thing with your training and your fitness. Like we set these goals, and if the goal becomes the process, then it becomes very sustainable, repeatable, and easy. And we're not doing the zero sum. I'm either going to make it or not. And so, like, if my goal is it's not that I'm going to get down to 10% body fat. It's that I'm going to do the things that somebody at 10% body fat does. Then you're going to get there. And whether it takes 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're doing the things that you need to do. It's the same thing if you want to be a millionaire, right? Like, I'm going to do the things that a millionaire would do to build these repetitions of action, and you focus on the action and not on the end result. You still have to have a goalpost in the direction you're going for your azimuth, obviously, but the core focus becomes the process. And that was like a huge unlock to me that has just completely changed how I do everything in life, even like my relationship with my wife and my kids. It's like focusing on the little actions, not the big thing. It makes it's how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. And it becomes so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we wrap this up. I think this has been a great conversation, even though we didn't talk about the hunting and lifting and eating as much, but it's definitely a lot of things going on within our country that people need to take notice of. They need to get involved, and they need to be able to. We hear everybody say it in the political world. You need to step across the aisle. Well, yeah, as hunters, we've got to step across the species, like you said, because if we do not get on the same page, we are just cutting our own throat.
Yeah, well said. And I'll even challenge it a step further. It's not even just across the species. It is completely across the aisle, because one thing that has blown my mind that I've seen with our community, our membership, is the number of non-hunters that have actually joined up to learn hunting, and then the number of them that actually came from the vegan camp. And when you take out the core focus, like the core extremists that are the animal rights and the vegans and the ones that are like crazy, a lot of people turn to veganism because they want a healthier lifestyle. They want less of an impact. They're anti-industrial farming and the agriculture that's going on with the concentrated animal feedlots and what's this industrialized mass production of livestock. And it leads them to veganism, which I think is a natural thing, right? Like, oh, I'm going to have less of an impact. Well, a lot of those folks, it's not a hard sell if you can clearly articulate what we're doing and what our core lifestyle is and why we do it, for them to realize, like, oh, hunting is everything I want, and I'm getting the health benefits of this clean meat, this clean protein, without the health complications that happens from long-term veganism. And so being open-minded in how we interact with people and not just shutting them down because you're like, oh, you're a vegan. And we have like vegan satirical stuff. So like, I'm not sitting out here on a high horse. Like, we have a vegan skip leg day sticker and stuff like it. I get it, vegans, but like, you can really get through to a lot of these folks by having an intelligent conversation. I think that's one of the things I've realized is like, it's my responsibility as a representation of hunters, especially now that I have a platform, that I have to know what I'm talking about, because if I don't, I'm only going to hurt us in the long run. Like the old argument of like, oh, if we don't kill deer, they're going to get sick and die. It's out the window. Like, it's valid for whitetail, but it's not valid for any of the other species, really. Like, mule deer actually aren't in a great spot. So we have to know the gamut of our North American model and the whole thing, so we can talk to folks and be ambassadors and then work together across species and better this lifestyle that we all love so much. Because if we don't, we're going to lose it.
Yeah. And what you said earlier, I done lost my train of thought. You was talking about being able to articulate why we do what we do. That is so important. And I sit on the board for the American Bear Foundation, the Virginia chapter, and they have challenged us to be more articulate, like why it's not just hunting. And you and I hit on some of those topics, or some of those pointers, that it's not just about the hunting. It's got a lot more to do with it, and we got to be able to talk about that where people, like you said, understand it and have an intelligent conversation about it. Not just, it's our heritage, it's our way of life. Well, absolutely, it's my way of life. Like you said, I don't know what I'd do if I couldn't hunt or fish. Like, I'd go crazy. But we've got to be able to explain to people why we do what we do.
Yeah, I mean, it's our responsibility. I mean, we have to. I agree completely.
Yep. Luke, I sure appreciate your time today. You get down this way, you need to holler at me, and man, we'll take a trip through the woods some point in time.
Yeah, I'm gonna be back that way for 3 to 4 weeks this fall, so I'll definitely give you a shout. So we'll try to line something up.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.